Hello dearies, welcome back to the Craft Kitchen. Today we're talking gesso. So this will be another episode for the Nerdy Knowledge playlist. So for junk journaling, we can use gesso in many ways. Foremost, to prepare our papers for painting or mixed media, which actually is the same usage as the original design. Today we're testing homemade clear gessos and comparing them to, in my case, matte gel, because I don't have clear gesso at hand, but I don't need it at all because I do have matte gel. Now I've prepared 3 little batches of homemade clear gesso, one with cornstarch, please excuse my handwriting, then this one with baby powder, and this one with calcium carbonate. Well, calcium carbonate, some may say it's the same as marble dust. It isn't. Even if some companies name their calcium carbonate marble dust. Marble dust contains all of the minerals that are used to build up marble, and calcium carbonate is just one component. It's kind of like chalk, and really on the cheaper side. So when you search for calcium carbonate and you stumble upon marble dust, and this says, I don't know, 90, even 100 euros or dollar for 1 kilogram, it is marble dust. If you're only paying 4 to 10 euros or dollar for 1 kilogram of calcium carbonate, it definitely is calcium carbonate. You also can buy this at your hardware store or gardening center, because calcium carbonate is used for more sandy soil, gardening soil, as a fertilizer. Even for chicken food this is used, because it's calcium, that's what they need to build up the eggshells, So this will be way cheaper than marble dust. So let's see. First, let's have a look at the consistency. So this is completely liquid, just the tiniest bit of the powder sunk to the bottom of this bowl, and it is very liquid. There's my rag. Then we have, before I stir this, I have to show you this. I don't know if you can see it on camera. Maybe there are some teeny tiny oily spots on the surface of this, and this is because baby powder contains the tiniest bit of oil to nurture the baby's skin, of course. And when I stir this, the talcum in here, baby powder actually is talcum with oil, has sunk to the bottom way more than with the calcium carbonate. And when I stir this, like I did stir the calcium carbonate one, there will be an oily film on the surface and it will bubble up. Well, if you would put this in a jar with a lid and shake it, it would actually foam. So, also runny enough, maybe a bit too runny, I don't know. And then we have the cornstarch, which is perfectly dissolved in the water, and the glue mix. Just as runny as milk, I'd say. So let's see. For the cornstarch batch, I've used 6 parts of cornstarch. I've used a, there it is, measuring spoon. Let's see, half a tablespoon. So 6 of those cornstarch, then 4 parts water, same measuring spoon, and 5 parts PVA, also same measuring spoon. I did this for all of this. And yeah, for the baby powder, I only needed 3 parts baby powder instead of 6 parts cornstarch. You see, this is runny, very runny, like milk. This is a bit more, yeah, kind of like gel-like, yeah, more like glue runny, I'd say. Then again, 4 parts of water, like with this, and 5 parts of PVA, just PVA. And for this I've used, again, 3 parts calcium carbonate, like I used here, 3 parts baby powder, 4 parts water, and 5 parts PVA. And this is a bit more runny than this one. It does make the slightest difference. You just can feel it when moving the bowls, but you actually can't see it. And of course, then again, I have my matte gel. This happens to be Liquitex because this is what I have at home, what I use. There are many other brands and the prices vary. This one happens to cost 16 ounces for, let me think about this, I think 28 or 25 euro, I guess. But you actually don't need much, so this is fine with me. No, this is not gesso. This is something completely different, but you can use it like gesso. So I'm going with this. So I don't have, I don't know, like 6 or 7 pots standing around here. For my first test, I'm going to use, yeah, this cheap black watercolor paper. Cheap in the sense of when you water it, yeah, your first layer, the pressed on textured layer, will come off. I'm only using this for mixed media with less water. So I'm going to paint my gesso on here, starting with the calcium carbonate. And I'm actually going to use a clear brush to go in the baby powder batch, so I don't get a false outcome here. So now mixing this up again because it already sunk to the bottom. Again. And now, sorry, the cornstarch hasn't settled down at all. So, and for the last part, I'm going to use acrylic medium matte gel, and to make it more authentic, I'm using a mixture of 4 parts matte gel and 1 part water. This is what it says on the container. You can water down the matte gel by 25% with water. So I'm letting this dry, and I'm also going to prepare this brown one, and this, yeah, I think it's 140 GSM cardstock, whereas this is 250 GSM, I think, and it has a very smooth surface. So I'm painting my gessos, my mediums, whatever, on these two as well, and then we are starting to compare them. 3 different papers, 4 different mediums. So, first example, this is the black watercolor paper, the cheap watercolor paper. I do have this blank one here. We've used homemade clear gesso made with calcium carbonate, with baby powder, cornstarch, and this down here is the matte gel, my substitute for clear gesso. So let's see. You actually can see here is quite a bit of white. Also here, this one got the tiniest bit darker, the cornstarch, and the matte gel, except of the bit of shine on the example piece, you can't really see a difference between the 2 shades of black. So what we're going to do first, I'm using this yellow just color pencil, scribbling a bit on here, and the same I'm going to do all over here, just to show you the difference. So you can see with the calcium carbonate, this yellow is much more vibrant than on the cardstock itself. Same appears for the baby powder, and yeah, more or less the cornstarch. Here the color remains the same, but on all 4 examples the pencil marks are a bit more visible. They are slightly thicker than just on the cardboard. So for the color, the calcium carbonate is the best option, but you will always have these white markings. Here, this is also calcium carbonate gesso. I've used on just 140 GSM cardstock, and then I've used a soft brush to even this painting, and you see there's also this very white background. With the baby powder, the yellow marking is a bit more faint than on this chalk, this calcium carbonate, but what you see on both examples, due to the oil in the baby powder, you have this kind of like flaky look on your paper. Even though I've evened this with a soft brush, there are these white dots all over. And then the cornstarch leaves a pretty good impression of the black underneath the coating, but still we do have these white strokes. And the matte gel, well, I'd say there's not much of a difference between the plain paper and the part I've coated with matte gel. So this is the first pencil test, so let's use another color just to test this. First on the plain cardstock, then cornstarch, baby powder. Oh no, this was calcium carbonate, sorry, this is the cornstarch, and this again the matte gel. So as you can see, the color on the calcium carbonate is much more vibrant, and again the marking is more even and smooth and such. Then again, there's not much difference between those two. And yeah, the baby powder, it is not as pleasant to write on because you do have a really rough surface with more or less chunky pieces because the oil bounds the talcum. Then again, the cornstarch, pretty nice strokes here, more vibrant than on the cardboard, and a really nice pencil line here. And then the matte gel, I'd say not much of a difference to the original cardstock. And same goes for this, just craft cardstock. Let's see, this is I've used the rough side for this, so we're using a darker pencil. And again here, ooh, it just broke. So now we have pretty much the same results as with the others. Not at all pleasant to write on here, and the pencil line is even punctuated somewhat. So first, with clear gesso you will get a much nicer drawing or writing experience on the paper. I have also prepared this gel pen. So again, you might see this like so. There's a bit of a reflection with the calcium carbonate background, as well as with the baby powder. The lines of the gel pen will look the tiniest bit, yeah, frayed, I'd say. Here on the cornstarch, yeah, also a bit frayed, but not as visible. And same on the matte gel, not as visible, but this line is really, really clear. So the fraying of the gel is because of the rough surface that is water soluble due to the PVA I've used here. In this matte gel, yeah, there are also acrylic polymers, but I actually couldn't find out what kind of polymers the different companies are using for gesso or even for acrylic paints. They are using quite different polymers as a binding agent for the pigments, or in this case for the talcum or calcium carbonate inside this gesso or whatever you might use. Sometimes they even use a non-soluble polymer powder, really fine powder, as a substitute for talcum or calcium carbonate. This is more on the cheap side. And with this matte gel, yeah, the polymer in here, there might also be some PVA in there, of course, for a binder, but in addition to other acrylic polymers that aren't water soluble. And this is the main difference. I have one thing to show you before I demonstrate why I don't use these very often for mixed media. And yeah, of course I forgot. Most time we want to write on or draw on book pages or beautiful pictures or whatever. So I've also painted this book page, this really rough. Maybe you can see this book page with 4 different agents. And let's see, first we're using the pink one, the color pencil on here. And all four just work fine, except, yeah, the baby powder again is a bit rough on the surface, so the pencil won't just glide easily on here. Just to show you. So this is, yeah, not that much of a difference. With the clear gessos, the color pencil markings are really neat, whereas the baby powder and without gesso it is, yeah, again slightly punctuated. And I'm often using these clear gessos on book pages for felt tip markers, especially alcohol markers. Let me show you. This corner, this strip here isn't painted, so I'm going to paint with the brush side and the fine side, so you can see there the alcohol ink just moves to the outside of the mark. And let's see what happens when we use both tips on the prepared surface. So this is what it looks like when the alcohol ink is soaked into the paper, and maybe you can see this on the gesso surfaces. On all four of them are the colors are lighter than here, except again the baby powder. The surface of the baby powder clear gesso is too rough to build an even coat on the microscopic level, so a bit of the alcohol ink will always seep through. And maybe, I'm not sure if you can see this on camera, the edges of this line, of these two lines are a bit frayed, whereas these three are even. The edges are smooth, but the color just stays on the medium, and yeah, it's just like representing the original color. This is a bit wrong here. There you go. There, not on the writing, so you can see the colors are a bit brighter. There again, I painted on the writing. And this just, yeah, seeps into the paper. You can also see the writing on the back through this line here, the tiniest bit. So for this kind of preparing your surface for drawing, for painting, whatever, the PVA homemade gessos are perfectly fine. But I want to show you another. I've prepared 4 cards cut out of the black watercolor paper I've been using in the color pencil example. So this one I've painted with the homemade gesso from calcium carbonate on this side, and the baby powder on here, the cornstarch on here, and this one is the matte medium, thinned by 25%. I've also tried to even the coating on the paper with a soft brush after I've painted on my gessos. And as you can see, yeah, didn't work that well on this piece, although the cornstarch was the most runny medium. I somehow had no luck trying to even this out. Yeah, well, it is what it is. So, like I told you, all of them, those 3, are made with PVA, and PVA, as we know, is water soluble. not water resistant. And this one is matte gel medium, made from polymers instead of PVA. Maybe it contains PVA, I don't know. That are water resistant, mostly water resistant. This is important. So I'm going to first protect my surface. So I'm going to spritz a bit of this watercolor orange yellow spray on my cards. Really fair amount. And then I'm taking a paper towel and just going to lift off a bit of the wet paint from each card. Yeah, protecting my surface didn't work that well, right? I'll manage. So, these are still wet. So this one is the calcium carbonate. I've picked up the spray paint, and when I rub on here, I still can feel the calcium carbonate, but the slightest bit sticky. Here is the baby powder. Still can feel the talcum and the oil-bound talcum, more or less. And yeah, it's a bit sticky. Here, the cornstarch. There is no cornstarch whatsoever left on here, not even sticky. There's no glue, there's no cornstarch. The spray just seeped through to this card. And then I do have the matte medium, and as you can see, only a bit of frayed paper, some fuzzles here. But it's only damp, slightest bit damp. Let's see what happens when this dries. So first, let's go over to the worst example. This is the card with the cornstarch. I've sprayed watercolor spray paint on here, and I've lifted the color on all 4 of the cards at the bottom. As you can see, it's still orange here, not much of a difference. Yeah, this is because the PVA glue in this gesso just became liquid again in contact with water, mixed with the color in the spray paint, and then dried again. So yeah, we do have kind of like a orange surface, orange coating all over. Well, these are the brush strokes from the cornstarch, and you can see here it's already it's also more kind of like completely orangey, except this splatter I just let dry without dabbing it. Then we have the calcium carbonate, also the PVA mixed with the color and then dried again. The splatters on here are a bit more prominent, but also they just ran into one another, mixed with the again liquid PVA, and then the PVA mixed with the color just dried. Here the baby powder did the same at first. The glue mixed with the paint, of course, but because the talcum and the oil in the talcum are bound. These are not the original splatters. They also spread the tiniest bit while the glue was wet, and it's really hard to see. Most of these splatters are shown this good because the talcum particles took on the color. And here you can see these tiny dots. These are the talcum particles combined with the oil. So the color just could set on there and dry. And this one is the matte gel medium. As you can see here, I took off the color with a paper towel. There's no orange left. And the splatters dried perfectly fine on the surface of the medium without combining with the polymer inside the medium. So let me show you here what I mean. So I think this, yeah, is the right one. So this is just plain watercolor paper, backside, and I'm using this this color pencil, to write on here. Here I still have the coating with the matte gel medium, so the pencil line looks a bit more, kind of like chalky, I'd say. This one is the baby powder. I don't know. Really, really hard to see. This is really an experiment you have to do for your own, by yourself. When you look from the edge over your paper in a specific angle, you can see with the pencil, with the color pencil, you are just pressing down the homemade gesso to make a mark. It's really hard to explain. It looks a bit like it is embossed. And here, again, you still have the tiniest bit of PVA with calcium carbonate here. So this mark looks very, very chalky, really nice, really vibrant. Let me show you. There you go. Although it has been wet. And this way. This one is, yep, the cornstarch. Yeah. Tiniest bit more color on here, because in the watercolor itself there's also calcium carbonate or some other kind of chalk. So this is really nice, but like I told you, it is orange all over. So not the best idea. For writing, yes, but not for mixed media with lots of water. So now how to prevent this from happening? Well, like I told you, most companies use different kinds of polymers in their recipes for gesso, also for acrylic mediums and texture paste. Texture paste is nothing more than, gesso without water. So first you could use acrylic paint with PVA glue. This is really cheap acrylic paint. So it's very likely that this contains PVA as well as a binder. Not only PVA, but a decent amount of PVA. But since there are other polymers in there that are water resistant when dry, I think Resin binder is one of them. Yeah, a resin binder, for example. Acrylic binder made of all sorts of polymers. Sorry, dearies, I can't give you more information about this. So yeah, you could make white gesso just using 3 parts of, let's say, calcium carbonate, 4 parts of water, 3 parts of PVA glue, and only 2 parts acrylic paint, because here's another thing. When you make this at home, you want to make sure it doesn't crack when bent. So you are using the PVA that usually does dry the tiniest bit flexible, and the acrylic paint that dries a bit more hard. Just combine these two to get a workable flexibility for papers. You could also use acrylic binder, of course. You can get this from art supply stores. These binders, believe me, are really, really expensive. So when you want to have a primer for your papers, clear or white or whatever color, that has to be waterproof. I'd actually buy clear gesso, or even white or black or brown, from an experienced company in this field, because the cost would be the same as with buying the calcium carbonate and the acrylic binder. If you just want to prime your canvas with gesso, to paint on it with acrylic paints, go for it. Just use calcium carbonate or talcum, water, and maybe PVA glue. There are some PVA glues mixed with other stuffs, other polymers that dry a bit more water resistant if you would like your canvas to be a bit more waterproof, but with acrylic paints doesn't really matter. But when you're playing with water, with mixed media, there's actually no homemade recipe that would make this stuff any cheaper. And as good as or better as. No, there's no such thing. Homemade gesso, homemade texture paste. I make this, like I told you, calcium carbonate, glue and acrylic paint, no water. It's just different. It can't be as good as or better as long as you don't know the recipe. So dearies, I hope you had a bit of fun and actually learned something. And I'd like to encourage you to make your own gesso, clear or white or whatever color, with what you might think would work for you. Just do a little bit of experimenting to understand how this stuff works and what it needs to work for you. As always, stay creative and be excellent to each other. Till next time, bye!